Hey guys, I'm excited for you guys to watch our video that we're doing today on foreclosures. We're going to go over the big three items that cause this, and we're excited for you guys to tune in. Feel free to leave your thoughts, and I'm happy that you guys are watching. Great. I'm excited to have you guys tuning into the video today. We're going to be talking about a question that I've been getting quite a bit. With a lot of the forbearance that has been taking place in the lending world, folks have been asking me, well, when are we going to start seeing the foreclosures? What's the deal on that? I mean, we're waiting to buy until the foreclosures come back and we can get really smoking hot deals like happened back in 2009 once the foreclosures hit super hard. So today I'm going to be talking about the video and overall what my opinion is on the future of the foreclosure market over the next couple of years. I've narrowed it down to the three things that I think are most important is the amount of equity that folks have in their homes, the lending requirements that lenders have now that they didn't have back then, and then the demand of buyers. I'm going to be going specifically here in Utah and probably more specifically in Utah County is what I'll be focusing on. And then I'll talk a little bit about this miscellaneous just for fun category where I'm going to put a lot of other factors together and things that contribute but maybe don't contribute as much and isn't worth noting or talking about super deeply on. So first is equity. This is nationwide, and actually Utah we're a little bit better than this, but 30% of homeowners own their homes free and clear. They have zero debt on it. I mean, they just have their homes in cash, which is a very strong amount. And about more than 50% own their or have more than 50% equity in their homes, right? So if they own a $400,000 home, they have more than $200,000 in equity in that home, right? More than 50% of homeowners. And on top of that, home ownership rate is higher. It's not like there's just less people who own homes and those people who own homes have a lot more, right? No, it's different, right? We actually have more home ownership. I think nationwide we're about 62, 63 as of when we made this video, right? So it's actually a pretty strong number, pretty solid number. And then there's a lot that goes into the psychology of this equity, right? Back when, and this kind of rolls into the lending requirements, back when what folks were doing is they were taking the equity out of their houses and they were buying their jet skis, they were buying houses, not houses, they were buying boats, they were buying ATVs, they were buying things for frivolous spending. Those were things that they didn't necessarily need, but they went out and they bought those things. So what did lenders do? Back then they would say, we can do a home equity line of credit and then up to 100 LTV, which is loan to value ratio. So they said, go ahead and borrow. We're not really concerned about it. It was kind of in a world where everyone thought it's always going to get better. It'll always be better. There'll never be any ebbs. There'll never be any flows, right? It's just super la land more than anything. So they continue to loan a ton on that, right? And then you could actually, as realtors, you could buy a house and then get money back from it. You could do zero money down loans. On investment properties, you could do very, very low money down. Now, on most investment properties, you have to do 20 to 25% down. So back then, a little bit of the wild, wild west, lending requirements weren't, they were as lax as they've ever been. And then so a lot of folks, on top of that, they were buying, which again rolls into this other point, they were starting to buy on speculation market. So people weren't concerned about cash flow, they weren't concerned about really anything except for appreciation, taking and riding their properties with them. And they said, even if we're negative cash flowing, we don't care. We just want more properties. And then the actual buyer demand was really, really inflated. And we had no numbers. We had nothing to justify that amount of buyer demand. And sellers were selling their homes for top dollar. Buyers were paying top dollar because they didn't care, right? They were able to lend without anything out of pocket, and they were able to go get into houses. But all of that created this balloon that we're so familiar with, right? It started to inflate, and then it wasn't real, right? The buyer demand wasn't real. So because that was a artificial buyer demand, lending requirements were so easy, and folks said, we don't need any equity in our homes, we can just go out and spend all that money, then what happened when there was a shift, and there's shifts and there's ebbs and there's flows anywhere, right? So in any market you'll see that. But the shift wouldn't have been nearly as strong if folks had equity, or if lending requirements were harder, or if there was a higher buyer demand. So if any of those three were much stronger, then we wouldn't have felt it nearly as much. But the difference is today is, again, the equity, we already talked about those numbers. The lending requirements, it's a lot more strict. 20% down on investments. There's still a couple of zero money down loan programs, but there aren't that many. And in conventional, you're usually looking 3 to 5% down if you're owner occupying it, and then FHA is still 3.5% down. But the difference isn't necessarily the amount of that they're lending out. It's on their debt to income ratios. So they require people to have more income. They're not letting them borrow as much. Back then, right? You didn't even need to have a social security number to get a zero money down loan program, right? So you could be undocumented and go and buy a bunch of things and buy property, and there was no issues with that. So that was, again, very, very different world. If you had a pulse, you could buy a home. If you had a pulse, you could buy a $500,000 home, right? Their debt to income ratios that they required were a joke. So now those are a lot more strict on what they require there for you to purchase a home. On some programs, they'll let you up to about 50 and change on the back end, which means between all your debts and your house payment, it can't exceed more than 50-ish% of your income, right? And then most conventionals, you're pushing it at about 45% on the back end, right? So you have at least 50% of your income to live and to do everything else. But back then, I mean, those numbers were just a joke. And again, the buyer demand here in Utah, we're getting a lot of demand. We have one of the highest birth rates in the whole nation. We have a lot of folks coming here from Oregon, from California, from Washington, where they're maybe not doing as well economically as what we are here. Their taxes aren't really as good as what we get here. So a lot of those folks are moving out of there. They're taking their money from there, where things are a little more expensive, and they're inserting it into our economy. So we have a lot more buyer demand because of those things, and that's a real buyer demand. I mean, on some buyers, we go out and we look at homes, and it's so super, super competitive that we have to make sure we structure our things very competitively to get their offers in and to get things done. Or do off-market deals, because a lot of the on-market deals are getting tons of offers, which is awesome for sellers, but it's very, very competitive for buyers, right? And then, so the buyer demand is real. Here's a quick little story. I don't want to talk about, well, I'll talk about one that's pretty much done. House in American Fork, honestly, market value for it, close to, I don't want to give too many numbers out, but close to about $320,000. We had offers in there that were $20,000 above asking price, where they said that they would pay the difference in appraised value if it appraised low. So there's a lot of money there. There's folks who are buying cash, who are buying condos for cash, even though honestly, in my opinion, I wouldn't really buy a condo as a straight investment if I had other options, but they are, right? There's a lot of this money that's in our economy, and people want to take their money and put it here in Utah because they feel like it's a nice, safe bet. And frankly, I do too. This is which will lead me to my little bit of my miscellaneous. In Utah County, we're scheduled to double our growth within the next 20 to 25 years, right? That's not an economist's point of view, that's a demographer's point of view. And what demographers say often is correct. Economists are up and down and up and down, and sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't, right? But demographers are a lot closer to the money. So if we double our growth here, on the east side we've got the mountains, on the west side we've got the lake throughout most of Utah County. So we don't have that much more growth to be had there. So what will take place is we'll see higher density homes, or higher density housing, right? So you'll see bigger condominium complexes. A lot of that will probably take place west of the freeway, where it hasn't been developed a whole lot. I think we'll see a lot more developments take place like what happened in Vineyard, where you have a lot more mixed use housing there. And then they come in more to the east side for the shopping and what takes place there, and the west side is mostly housing. So Payson, Santaquin, Eagle Mountain, those places will continue to grow a whole lot, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But all the other places, it's going to continue to appreciate. And something that I'm talking about in another video, but inflation continues to take place. Inflation goes about 3% year over year is what standard inflation has been. We just printed up a few $1 trillion. I mean, just kind of out of thin air, really. So what's going to take place for us to be able to cover that debt? We're a little bit past the point of no return of it not having an effect. With the push on both sides to increase minimum wage, and with minimum wage not having been increased for a while, I think we are going to see a rise in minimum wage. A lot of folks are pushing for $15 an hour, which is more than double what it is now. If minimum wage rises, then what will take place there is everything is going to raise in price, so the dollar is going to go down in value. Where your dollar and what things are fixed, your mortgage more than likely is a fixed 30% interest rate, which is another thing talking about here. They had a lot more variable rates. Here, it's a lot more fixed. A lot of these variable rates or ARMs, right, adjustable rate mortgages, are now gone, and they don't get to use them anymore. A lot of those programs, they did away with them. But neither here nor there. What I'm saying is now, when you have those rates and when inflation comes in and takes place, if you own a home and you have a fixed mortgage, the only thing that's going to change are your taxes and your insurance on it, but everything else is going to stay the same. So as the rents go up, now that property, if you own it as an investment, the cash flow is going to be going up on it, and the value is going to continue to go up on those. So that's where, again, I don't see that taking and hurting and providing a whole lot more foreclosures. But anyway, I get lost a little bit on the miscellaneous part because that's more speculatory and it's a little more fun. But the overall point in terms of foreclosures is I just think we have too much equity where we're going to see a big hit. There'll probably be a couple more foreclosures, and foreclosures haven't completely gone away ever since. Just the rate has gone down a lot lower. So there's just a lot less foreclosures. So we might see a couple more foreclosures, but not enough to really affect the market. And that's where I think the market is going. That's what I think is going to take place with foreclosures. We'll see a little bit, but the point is people have equity. Most of the folks that we helped buy homes last year, even now in COVID environment, I mean, they've gone up 6 or 7%, which is a lot on a $400,000 home. 7% of that is $28,000, right? $28,000 in equity that they built up just on appreciation. And then with the rates the way they are, on their debt pay down on that, you're looking at closer to $6,000, right? So $6,000 plus your 28, you're looking at $34,000. So even after, if you've had it for at least 1 year and haven't done a cash out refi or haven't done anything like that, then on a $400,000 home, owning it 1 year, $34,000 after you pay all your fees and get everything done, you're still walking away with probably $25,000 in your pocket to go out and do that. So if you're missing your payments, you just take and you sell your home, have enough equity to consolidate that debt, and then get into the rental market or downsize into another home that the monthly payments are more doable for you. So, but then that also makes the buyer demand harder, right? Because those lower homes, and if more folks doing that, then that will continue to raise the prices there, which again also helps those people who are selling there to sell them at a higher rate so the foreclosures don't come up. Again, I know this is a lot of info, probably a lot to digest right off the bat. Feel free to check out some of the data on your own. Feel free to check out some of my other Instagram posts or Facebook posts where I post some of those graphs. But overall, from what I can tell, and based on these key factors, foreclosures aren't going to come back nearly, like, not even 5% of what they were back in 2008, 2009, 2010. We're not really going to see that. Again, folks who need to sell it, they have enough equity to do it, and then most folks don't really need to do that because they already have so much equity in their homes that they'll be just fine to ride waves and ebbs and flows. But again, I don't think we're going to see a lot of big waves or a lot of big flows throughout the next little period of time. But I hope this video is beneficial for you. If you guys have any questions on that data, feel free to reach out, send me a message, just connect, right? I love to go over all those options. I love seeing what people's situations are and finding the way to get them to the next point of life where they want to be. Like that's what's fun for me. So if you guys have any questions like that, I'd love to connect. Feel free to leave your post or leave it in the leave your thoughts in the comments or shoot me a DM or whatever works best for you to connect. I love hearing from you. Thanks again.